Greetings, YouTube. I came to driving later in life. I didn't get a license until I was a month shy of my 36th birthday, so 20 years after your average American gets their driver's license. Basically because I didn't really have a need for one. And when I finally did, my wife, who at the time was my girlfriend, helped me get the driving experience I needed, and I did successfully actually drive her vehicle into a post at one point in the process. Felt very bad about that. And got my license on a standard, and then I've never driven a standard since because I don't ever want to again, but I did get my license on a standard, and have been happily driving ever since. And one of the things I learned while learning to drive was something called the 2-second rule. And the 2-second rule is pretty simple, is that you want a 2-second time span between yourself and the car in front of you. So when you're going down the road, watch the car in front of you pass a stationary object and see if you can count to 2. If you count to 2 or more, there's enough space between you and the vehicle in front of you that you should be able to react in case something goes bad. And if you're less than 2 seconds, you're not going to have the time to react if something goes bad. I also make sure that when I'm stopped at a light, I try to give myself enough space that if I have to, I can go onto a sidewalk and escape if I have to, just in case. Yeah, I'm a little paranoid. And I find that 2-second rule is very comforting to me. I always make sure I have it, at least usually a little bit more than that, so that I feel that I am not only being a good driver and being safe, but I'm not going to become a danger to others by complicating a bad situation with those in front of me by becoming a bad situation for those behind me. Yay. And I'm hoping the person behind me also has that so they don't end up in my back seat. But one of the things that has taught me is boundaries. Because if you have healthy boundaries, your life will be less complex. And it's hard for me to do that when it comes to my personal life, because sometimes I don't know how to judge them when it comes to personal relationships. And that's because I was raised in an unhealthy household by a psychotic drunk and a passive-aggressive mother. So I was not raised in a good environment. So boundaries were not something that I was taught about when I was growing up. And I very much had to learn them as an adult, blindly blundering around and unfortunately hurting the feelings of others in the process, because I didn't understand boundaries. I was an ass, and I was a jerk to people, and I know that I hurt people's feelings, and even though I didn't mean to, it doesn't matter. I still did, and I'm still responsible for that, and I still have to have to be accountable for my actions. It doesn't matter how badly someone treats you in life. It doesn't justify you treating someone else poorly. Because the reason you're doing it, you may have an explanation. You were raised poorly or you were treated badly. That doesn't justify your actions being visited upon somebody else. An explanation is not an excuse. And defining boundaries has been an ongoing process for me. Knowing when, say, no, I'm done. This conversation is over. This relationship is done. I want some space. I don't have to engage with you. And when it comes to social media, it's the same thing. You don't have to engage with anybody, ever. And if you have a YouTube channel and people leave comments that you don't like, you have the capacity to remove those comments and block somebody. You don't have to engage with them, particularly if they're disingenuous in the sense, you check their channel, the channel was made last week. It's a pretty good chance that this is not a legitimate channel. It's a sock puppet account. It's okay to say nothing to them and just make them go away. But if you feel that someone may have left a legitimate comment, but just may be misinformed, or maybe you can help them to understand something from a different perspective, maybe they're not getting, give it a shot. But if they turn out to be a jerk, make them go away. And if you unfortunately find yourself in an exchange with somebody on somebody else's channel, I have actually deleted comments I've made just to shake off somebody who was an ass. I've decided that boundary, okay, yes, the comment I made was something I wanted to say, but it's not worth the cost that has now been attached to it. Now, has that person created an environment of silencing someone else? Yeah, they have. But I'm also not required to put up with it. I don't have to keep listening to their comments popping up, on my phone and in my notifications and on, in it's anywhere else you might get a notification. I can get notifications in like 3 different locations, and I don't need to see this person popping up in those again and again. Setting those healthy boundaries is something I've had to learn. No one's ever, you know, required to have your attention. You don't owe it to anybody. And if somebody says, well, I don't understand that, that's okay. You don't have to explain it to them. Just because someone else can't understand something doesn't mean it can't be understood. And it may not be able to be understood by them, and that's okay. You're not their teacher. You can't learn it for them. You can't think it for them. Just like if somebody's being a jerk to you in a real world, you can't fix that if they're not willing to do the work to make sure that they're coming from a healthy perspective, a healthy place. And if they're not, and you explain this and they don't want to change, or they want to blame you, they're trying to gaslight you and say it's your fault, you don't need that. You don't have to engage. As soon as I found out one of my coworkers drove drunk, I never spoke to him again. As soon as I found out people at work were supporting the shit given in 2016 and 2020, never spoke to him again. I have no need for you in my life. You have shown me a side of your character that has defined that you don't have a character. You have decided to take a path of moral and ethical bankruptcy. I don't need to engage with you. Those are the boundaries I've decided that I'm going to establish to keep myself safe and happy. So apply that 2-second rule to your life. Give yourself the space you need for comfort and for health. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. I learned that in first aid. You walk into a room, you see somebody lying on the ground, the first thing you do is figure out why are they on the ground. You don't rush up to them, because then there could be 2 people lying on the ground. That's not helping anybody. You just made the situation twice as bad. Figure out what's going on. Can you now safely help them once you understand? The answer is yes, help them. The answer is no, call for professional help. That is how you help them. You've not endangered yourself. You're now helping that person. You've done what you can. And there's nothing wrong with that. And no one can hold you accountable for it because you did your best. So set those boundaries. Give yourself those 2 seconds.